When it came to the group leaving, however, that was where the pacing had the biggest issue. Hello, welcome to another book review. I'm your host, Kristen, and today I will be reviewing the YA fantasy book, Whispers of Energy, Connection, by Rosy JLH. In case you are interested in buying this book afterward, content warnings are animal injury/death, oppression, and discrimination. I will start with the overall plot, then writing, world building, and finally the characters. Also, this review will be spoiler-free until between these timestamps, so if you want to avoid spoilers, I recommend skipping over that section. Now that those notes are out of the way, let's begin! According to the back of the book, the plot is as follows. As part of the lowest rank in her society, Aaliyah has grown accustomed to the fact that she can never learn of the secrets, despite how much she wishes. However, one day, something strange happens, leading to a secret being revealed to her. As she uncovers more secrets, each one puts her in more danger than the last. She discovers one last secret, a secret so dark and well hidden that even the cats closest to the powerful leader, the Overseer, are not aware of. Now, she must be the one to keep secrets and hide what she knows. The story started off strong, but quickly screeched to a halt. The first chapters delivered good, interesting information, like Aaliyah being at the lowest rank in the colony, what energy had the potential to do, and how the Overseer kept everyone's energy in check. It also set up some potential plot threads, such as Magpie pieced together what Kaden was up to, along with trying to find an Unchosen he should report. When it came to the group leaving, however, that was where the pacing had the biggest issue. Although I wasn't surprised that Aaliyah refused the call to adventure at first, as that is typical in stories following the hero's journey, it was shocking that she decided against it over and over again. Waiting to leave until half the book was done slowed the pacing down. It was frustrating that the rest of the group didn't simply leave without her, given the direness of the mission. Instead of rushing to stop more cats from vanishing, they dragged their paws until it was almost too late. The tension also became lackluster when the four cats were so unbothered by figuring out how to leave that they took over an hour-long nap beforehand. That said, the ending of the book did get better. There was a tiny twist involving Rhea, the Overseer, and the Object, which definitely has potential. I can only hope that said reveal gets followed up on in the second book and has massive consequences. In terms of the writing, it was fine. The descriptions of taste, temperature, touch, and sight were well done, so I had zero trouble visualizing those aspects. I do wish more senses, such as hearing and smell, were more heavily included, but it was good nonetheless. My most prominent complaint with the writing, however, was the dialogue and how some of the sentences just stopped midway through. The first problem was because the conversations became repetitive after a while. For example, Rhea would explain a detail about an item called the Object to Aaliyah, but then later she would give the same information to Magpie. There was also a lot of word proximity, and a majority of the dialogue seemed rather forced In this case, I recommend reading the dialogue out loud. This can help with determining if the flow of the words and the length of the sentence sounds natural. The second gripe I had was due to the sentences being choppy in places where it didn't seem appropriate. For instance, most of the sentences would have a period where the middle part should have been, making said sentence incomplete. I figured that this was to possibly help emphasize a word or to try and make the sentence feel more impactful. Unfortunately, though this technique did make the sentence stand out, it also jolted me out of the story each time. Again, I would recommend for the author to read her work out loud in order to help with this. The good news, though, is that these are all quick and easy solutions. Besides those two problems, the writing has promise. It only needs to be honed in order to reach the next level. Though the world building the reader got was interesting, I do wish that there had been more of it, especially when it came to the magical element. It was detailed that the cats lived in the wild and that they were assigned their own patch of land. There were also the ranks of unchosen, support, seer, and overseer, with the unchosen as the bottom rung and not being given any benefits. Meetings for supports were also mentioned, in which they would report a cat they suspected of causing trouble. Everything else was left up in the air regarding the hierarchy, besides ranking trials and teachers. For example, it was brought up that supports were subjected to brainwashing techniques as part of their training under a mentor. With the character of Caden, though, he was very much against the overseer's ideas and thought what the leader did was unfair. Caden was also friends with Aaliyah and Unchosen, so how exactly were the lessons effective when Caden hadn't changed at all? Furthermore, some of the cats lived in what appeared to be an underground den when it came time to raise kittens. However, most supports didn't know their way around the tunnels. This was odd, as it seemed like a higher rank should know every paw step of the land. The most glaring error was the journey out of the overseer's land. There was no mention of what type of world it was. Were there other territories like his? Was this a kingdom? Also, if all the cats had to do to leave was cross over a river, why hadn't a majority of the Unchosen done that already? For the energy itself, the magic wasn't explained as much as I would have liked. There was no statement on what the energy was, where it came from, or why the necklaces didn't connect before to recharge when the overseer was constantly draining them. When it came to what abilities the energy could produce, that wasn't given much attention either. Rhea did say that every ability could be different, which I did think was neat. Yet, she also didn't say why she could detect some abilities, but not others. Not to mention, Rhea explained one's powers by telling the group that the cat can simply perceive what their energy can do. Honestly, I wish that it went more in depth than just that. It felt less like a satisfactory answer and more like all the specifics about energy hadn't been worked out yet. All that aside, this was only book 1. Given what happened during the last chapter, I hope that it will be an opportunity to explore more of the social structures, laws, and the environment. I especially want to witness a couple of the trials the unranked cats have to go through to qualify as supports. As the first point of view character, I did like Aaliyah's personality. She was snarky, hot-headed, and rather rude. Given the trauma Aaliyah went through, along with a supposed lengthy separation from Caden, her attitude was definitely understandable. It was nice to have a main character that had plenty of flaws and wasn't the most pleasant at times. After Aaliyah wanted to stay behind, however, that was the chapter that lost me. What was making her remain in a society where she was oppressed and her land could be taken by another Unchosen? A part of me understood that Aaliyah leaving the only place she knew could be frightening. However, not having her agree to the quest the second time around made her lose agency. Aaliyah trying to find a place where she was no longer under strict rules seemed well worth the risk of not being by her river and heading out onto the unknown. During the journey, Aaliyah also got a tad annoying. After a cat was killed, Aaliyah was sad, but then quickly got over the death. It got to the point where Aaliyah and Caden were play fighting after crossing the river when said cat's body was barely cold. Aaliyah also claimed that she and Caden were taking the mission seriously when all they did was ask for breaks, continue to goof around, and argue. The message of not having to be solemn all the time was unique. However, it made it difficult to hammer the point home when the two characters never seemed to take the quest urgently in the first place. Regardless, Aaliyah did regain some agency in the end by wanting to get the object with Rhea. Plus, knowing that Aaliyah still has some lingering trust issues, I wonder how she'll react to Rhea's actions at the start of Book 2. As Aaliyah's current love interest, Caden was, morally speaking, not a good friend. He was alright at the start, especially when he tried to stand up for Aaliyah and scolded Magpie for being disrespectful to her. I also thought it was sweet that he was still friends with Aaliyah and wanted to gain her trust, despite being pressured by Magpie that supports shouldn't be hanging around Unchosens. Caden even went as far as visiting Aaliyah's territory often in order to see her, claiming he needed a drink of water despite having a stream on his own land. Unfortunately, that was where my good graces for Caden ended. Throughout the rest of the novel, he was rather condescending towards Aaliyah. For instance, Caden often thought that Aaliyah needed protecting, got envious when he saw her talking to another tomcat, and went as far as healing a minor scratch. It was like he didn't see Aaliyah as her own cat, capable of taking care of herself, but rather as an object. Another example of this was when Caden justified reporting another cat in order to save Aaliyah, even though Caden lying and being obvious about sneaking around was what got them into trouble in the first place. Worse, Caden was more concerned about losing Aaliyah's friendship than the fact that someone else was in danger. It was not a good look. Despite what the text said, Caden was also terrible at keeping secrets, even though that was part of his job. In the first chapter, he nearly blurted out confidential info regarding energy with little prompting. My dislike for Caden aside, he did still have his positive moments at times. It was pretty cute whenever Aaliyah and Caden cuddled, and that Caden constantly got twigs in his long fur. I also thought it was kind when he caught prey for Aaliyah after accidentally startling her mouse earlier. I could only hope that he will learn to appreciate Ela more as her own character. Rhea was the best of the group since she had the biggest personality and character drive. Not only did she start to teach more Unchosen about energy, but she also wanted to collect the object in order to overthrow her father. Sure, Rhea was strict, but that was because she knew what was at stake if she didn't succeed. The part that confused me about Rhea, though, was why she was so willing to lie to the others, even when there was little reason for it. She had promised to teach Aaliyah, Caden, and Magpie, but then never followed up on it. Rhea claimed that the trio learning about energy would be a distraction. If she was so worried about the group being that much of a hindrance, though, then why didn't Rhea just go on the quest by herself? She would have gotten the task done faster, and the rest of the group honestly didn't contribute much beyond catching food. Besides her odd choices for travel companions, Rhea was the most competent. Of course, her cool ability to read thoughts through the eyes of other cats did help with that. It was also great getting to know that Rhea's powers did have range limits, as well as her being unable to use her gift if one avoided eye contact. It provided realistic limits and made sure that Rhea wasn't too overpowered. Rhea's relationship with her father, the Overseer, was also quite complicated, which was fantastic. On one side, she recognized how awful of a leader he was, and that he needed to be replaced in order to prevent more bloodshed. On the other hand, however, he did still raise Rhea after the death of her mother, so she most likely has some good memories with him. Can't wait to see how the relationship develops. Magpie was a jerk throughout the majority of the book, which I'm pretty sure was the author's intention. He viewed any Unchosens as automatically beneath him and not worth talking to, and that even applied to his own sister. Magpie also wanted to report an Unchosen in the hopes of getting on the Overseer's good side. This was despite knowing that reported cats were never heard from again. However, this part of his personality fell apart when Rhea told him about getting rid of the current Overseer. When talking to Rhea, Magpie liked the idea of everyone being equal in the system. Why? He was benefiting from the current system, so why wouldn't he want to stay on top? Psychologically speaking, characters who are at the top of the hierarchy or in a position of power, such as those in the government, often want to stay that way. To have that ingrained aspect of Magpie completely vanish as soon as it was convenient was rather strange. The way Magpie came around to Aaliyah also felt rushed. During the journey, Magpie was just suddenly sorry for all his actions, with no insight as to what made him think differently in his own point of view chapters. Magpie apologized for being mean to Aaliyah, but she replied that it wasn't Magpie's fault that he was manipulated. But Magpie was in charge of his own actions when it came to how he interacted with others. Caden went through the same manipulation, even mentored Magpie, and still saw Aaliyah as a friend. So why can't Magpie take responsibility? On the positive side, though, Magpie did have a strong personality and room for plenty of good character growth. I do wonder if he has any lingering biases, even if he won't admit them out loud. Hopefully. I also get to see how he became so classist in the first place. For the main antagonist, the Overseer was rather weak. For one, he could barely keep those under him in line. If cats were so easily led astray by Rhea, then the Overseer wasn't doing a very good job at manipulating them. This especially applies to the brainwashing techniques, as they seem to have zero effect on Caden, yet the Overseer saw him in a favorable light. Another problem was also the fact that Rhea's rebellion was happening right under his nose, yet he barely seemed concerned about it. It was just hard to take him seriously as a villain until the small twist at the last chapter. Third complaint with the Overseer was how he was a flat character. The motivations behind his tyrannical actions were never explained, such as how he justified murder to himself. I would have also liked to see more of his softer side when it came to interacting with Rhea. Considering that I don't think Rhea has any siblings, it would be interesting to learn about what her relationship with her father was like growing up before she realized he was unfit to be leader. Alright, now onto the spoilers. I'll count to 3 seconds if you want to keep this book spoiler free. 1, 2, 3. And here we go! Cypress being murdered by the Overseer wasn't that surprising. Magpie and the other cats knew that Unchosens, who had been reported, were vanishing. What did they think was happening to said cats? Surely the notion that the Overseer was murdering Unchosens couldn't have been that far-fetched. After all, there was a rumor that the Overseer had executed his own mate to gain his current position. One detail I was disappointed about was that Aaliyah didn't obtain her power in this book. It seemed like all the chapters before had been building up to that moment, especially since it was one of the few things that Aaliyah constantly talked about. Oh well, maybe she'll get her ability in the second novel. The last twist was when Aaliyah and Rhea finally stumbled upon the cave where the object was located. However, it had already been taken. It turned out that the Overseer had beaten them to it. He contacted Rhea through her thoughts and wanted her to come back to work with him. The book concluded with Rhea ordering the group not to follow her. After that, she left to presumably be a leader alongside her father. Although I wanted the teams to succeed, I did think that this was a decent ending and left plenty of room for possibilities. Overall, I give this book 2.5 stars, though the writing, world building, and pacing could have used some work. The story as a whole did have promise. I did enjoy the variety of powers that the characters could have and how unique they could all be. The group also have good arcs that have plenty of potential in the series. I hope Rosy will keep improving her craft and wish her the best of luck on her writing journey.